So let's learn how to solve the quadratic equation. So how to solve the quadratic equation. Quadratic equation. How to solve the quadratic equation. So what is a quadratic equation? So if we have an equation like this, what we call ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where we assume that a not equal to 0. So this is called a quadratic equation. So this is the form of a quadratic equation. So the order, so degree is 2. So degree 2 equation. So you get degree 2 polynomial, so it equals 0. So there are two major methods to solve such equation. So there are two methods. One is the what we call the factorization method. So factoring. So when you do factoring, there are three ways to do it actually. So the first method is what we normally call, we can look at only the factors of C. So we can look at factor C plus what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a trial and error method. So it's a trial and error method. So we're gonna kind of guess the values and plug in them. And the second method is what we call the we can look at the factors of AC product. So factors of, so we'll have factor AC. So here we kind of don't need to use a trial and error method because the numbers comes really fast. And then the third method is what we call the grouping method. So the grouping. Normally we use the grouping method for degree 3 polynomials when you want to factor degree 3 polynomials, but we can use the grouping method for these kind of ones also. Okay, that's the first method, the factoring technique. And then the other method is the we can use the quadratic formula. So use the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. So what's the quadratic formula? Let's recall the quadratic formula. It is x equal negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac square root divided by 2 times a. So we can do that because we assume that a not equal to 0. So this is valid. So these are the two techniques that we can use to solve the quadratic equation. So we can solve like several different type of problems just to make sure that you understand the complete theory behind. So let's start a little bit more about the so what is the factoring method? So factoring method, in the factoring method there are four cases to consider. So they are, so we can see a x squared bx c, and then a x squared bx and c, a x squared bx and c, then a x squared bx and c. So what are those four cases? So you can see that the c term can be positive or c term can be negative. In these cases, the b term can be positive or b term can be negative. Again, b term can be positive or b term can be negative. So what's going to happen in these cases? So if the c has a positive sign, it means that the two terms have the same sign. So this means that the same sign. If the c term has a negative sign, that means that the terms are opposite sign. So they have opposite sign. Opposite sign. Now, what the sign of B says? So the sign of B is, so we know that in the first case, when the C is positive, so the second term says that this is the sign of the two terms. So this is the so signs of terms. Again, but what happened here? So this is the sign of the largest term. So this is a sign of the largest term. Largest term. Good. So those are the four cases that we need to consider. And then what we normally do is, so there are two ways to proceed after that. We can consider only the factors of C. So consider factors of C only. And then after we consider factors of C only, we use a trial and error method. So after that we use a trial and error method. So we do trial and error. So that means we plug in and see whether it's going to work. And the second one is the most easiest one. So we're going to consider factors of AC product. So we're going to consider factors of both AC. And then in this case, what we normally do is we need to find two numbers. So find two integers actually. I'm going to call it two numbers. Find two numbers m and n such that the m-n product is equals to AC, and then m plus n equals to the B term along with the sign. So that's what we do after that. So let's see how this works in several different examples. So let's say solve for x squared minus 17x minus 15 equals 0. So let's discuss the first method, that is the factoring C only. So factor C method. So what we can do, in this case C is negative 15. So we're going to consider factors of that. So what are the factors of negative 15? So what we normally do is, and then we know that, so the C is negative, and then B is also negative. So that means we're going to find two numbers. We need like a, because the B is negative term, since B is a negative term, so what we can do when you look at factors, for the larger one, we're going to put the negative sign. So that means we can find negative 15 and 1. The other one is negative 5, 3. So those are the only two that we need to consider. We don't want to consider anything else because the larger one has to be negative and there are no other options. So now what we're going to do, we're going to think of factoring. So what are the factors that we want to consider? So you can see that the first term is 4x squared. So that means there are factors like this. So there are factors such as 2x and a number, 2x and numbers. That's the first type of factoring. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put those numbers and see whether any of them are going to work. So we can put negative 15 and 1. And then you can see that once you do it like that, we're going to multiply the two numbers and see whether you're going to get the middle term. And you can see that in this case you get negative 30 here, and then you're going to get 2. So you're going to get the negative middle term, negative 28x. So that means that doesn't equal, so we are not going to use that. So that means that's not going to work. So let's look at the next one. So it's a trial and error. We're going to plug in the numbers and see whether you get the middle term. So you can look at 2x. So the same thing. So switch the numbers and see whether it's going to work. So you can say plus 1 minus 15. You switch the numbers, and in this case, what's the middle term? So you get the middle term as actually in this case you don't want to do that because you can see the 2x is the same, 2x is the same. So in this case you don't want to switch the numbers. Okay. So see that negative 28 did not work. So what we can do, we can look at the other two numbers, and then since it is 2x, you don't want to switch the two numbers. Otherwise, like if you have like 2x, 3x, you probably need to switch the numbers and see whether it's going to work. But in this case, you don't have to because it's the same number. So you can look at the other two numbers. So you have 2x and then 2x. Let's look at other two numbers. What are the two numbers? You have negative 5 and 3. And then when you put these two numbers, you can see that what do you get? In the middle term, you get negative 10, and then 2x plus 3 means 6x. So that means you're going to get negative 4x. And you can see that that also did not equal to the middle term, so that's also not going to work. Go to the next one. So now you can see that the 2x doesn't work in this case. So we're going to go other factoring of the first term. So the next factoring that we need to consider is 4x and x. So again, we can try the two numbers. We're going to put the negative 15 here and then plus 1. See whether we get the middle term. What do you get for the middle term? You're going to get, you can see that it is negative 15x, and then you have 4x, so you get negative 11x. You get negative 11x, and you can see that that also not going to work. And then since the two numbers are different, you also have to consider the other product. So you have 4x and x. So you can see, you can switch the numbers. See whether this can work. So if you switch the numbers, what do you get? You're going to get, if you multiply these two, you're going to get negative 60x. So and then you get a 1. So that means you're going to get negative 59x. That's also does not equal to the middle term. Because what we try to do, we try to find the right product that's going to give the middle term. That's also not going to work. So that means we're going to go for the other one. So we're going to say 4x. This is x. Then we can use the next one. So what is the next one? We have negative 5 and positive 3. So let's look at the middle term. So you're going to get negative 5 and 12. So you're going to get 7x. So you get 7x. And that's also not equal to the middle term. So what's the last one we have? We have 4x and x. Switch the numbers. So we're going to say plus 3 and negative 5. And you can see that in this case, you're going to get negative 20 and 3x. So you're going to get negative 17x. That means it worked. So that means that is the correct factorization. So you get the correct factorization here. So that's the problem with this method. You can see that if you just consider the factors of the last term only, you have to consider several cases. But you know that you can mentally calculate this quickly, so you really don't want to write all of them. But you can see, but the method can be a little lengthy. So now what we're going to do, we're going to consider the factoring of the AC product. You can see that that's a little easier. So let's look at that. So let's look at the factoring of AC product. So the factoring AC, not just A but AC. So what is AC in this case? So you can see it is 4 times negative 15 so that means it is negative 60. So what we're trying to do, we try to find two numbers so that it's going to give you the middle term. So so in our problems, if you look at the problem again, so it is 4x squared minus 17x minus 15 equals 0. So what you're going to do, you're going to find two numbers. The product is negative 60, sum is 17, and you can easily see that those two numbers are negative 20 and 3. So if you look at those two numbers, negative 20 and 3, you can see that the product is negative 60, and if you add the two numbers, you're going to get negative 17. So we perfectly find two numbers. And the one other thing, so you can see that there's a 3 as a factor. Since there's a 3 as a factor, it's clear that you cannot have a form like 2x and a 2x, because the 3 has to be a multiple of these factors. So we have 2 here. So since we have 2 here, so you cannot have so since we have 3 here, you cannot have 2x there. So that means we don't want to worry about this factoring. So the only factoring that's going to be possible going to be, it is 4x and then x. So that's the only factoring we need to consider. And then what we're going to do, and we can see that we already have 4x here. So that means the other term has to be negative 5, because that's the only way you can get negative 20. And we have x means 1, and this has to be plus 3. So you can see, you can get the answer very quickly. So that is the second method of factoring. But you can see that this is very quick. You don't want to worry about considering all the cases as before. Good. And then let's talk about the grouping technique. So what we're going to do in the grouping method, so the grouping. So in the grouping method, what we're trying to do is we can use those two, the same numbers here. So so we use the exact same numbers. So we have to do the same thing here. So we can look at the factors of AC product, so that we get the middle term. And then what we can do, we can write them like this. So we have 4x squared, and there's no order, but we just need to write the two numbers. It's negative 20, but it's a middle term, so you have to add an x there, plus 3. You have to add x there, and negative 15 equals 0. And then what we can do, we're going to group them. So that's what we call a grouping method. We're going to group the first two and the last two. So in the first two, what is the common term? The common term is 4x. So we can take the 4x out. So then you're going to say x minus 5. And then the next, so what we try to do in the next pair, we try to create the x minus 5 factors. So that means you have to take plus 3 out to do that. So you can take plus 3 out, so you're going to get that as a factor. Now what we can do, we write the common factor, and then we write the other two numbers. So what we can do, we can write these two numbers there. So that means we're going to get 4x plus 3. So that is the factoring. and this is what we call the grouping method. Here we are not going to try anything because it automatically comes, but still you can see that we use these two numbers here, -20 and 3, and then we just use the grouping to find the factoring. So that's the third method, and you can see that out of these three methods, the second method, factoring of AC, works when we have like large A and C which have many factors. So but it's up to you, you know, what you're going to do, because what we need to do is learn how to do it. That's the whole point. So it's up to you, like, you know, what method you want to use. Good. Let's look at some examples. So we can start with problem like this. So this is what we discuss here is just the factoring, and after we factor, what we're gonna do next is we're gonna set each of those numbers equal to 0, each of factors equal to 0, and solve for x. But that we're gonna do in the next one. So okay. So but here we discuss how to factor it, because after we know how to factor, then we can solve the problem. Okay, so we factor them. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna set each of the numbers equal to 0, each of the factors equal to 0, and solve. So let's do that. So what we're gonna do now is, so we have the factors. We have 4x plus 3, and then x minus 5 equals 0. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set them equal to 0. So we have 4x plus 3 equal to 0, or x minus 5 equal to 0. The reason is, when you have two factors equal to 0, the only possibility that you can get a 0 is one of those has to be, at least one of them has to be 0. So that's why we set each of them equal to 0. So now what we can do after we get that, then we need to solve for 4x. This is very easy. We're gonna subtract 3 from both sides. So then you're gonna get 4x equal -3, and then we divide by 4. Once you divide by 4, you're gonna get -3 over 4. So the same thing, you're gonna add 5 to both sides. You're gonna add 5 to both sides, and once you do that, you're gonna get x equal 5. So that means this is gonna give you the solution. So the solution is, x equal -3/4 or x equal 5. So you can write it like that, or you know, there are several other ways to write it. You can also say x equal -3/4 comma 5. You separate them by comma, or you can also write the solution set. So you can say the solution set. So the solution set is, so let's put the numbers in a set. So -3/5 comma -3/4, -3/4, -3/4 comma 5. So that's the solution set. So there are three ways to write your answer. So this is the one way, or you can write like that, or you can write the solution set. So after you factor, this is what we can do next. Good. So let's solve some problems. So let's look at this problem. So let's say we have example, solve x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0. When the coefficient of the first term is 1, we really don't need to look at the product, we just look at the last term, so it is 2, and then you can see this is a plus and a plus situation. So plus and plus means you need to find factors of the factors of C, so that the sum of the two terms is 3. So you can see that those two numbers are 2 and 1, 2 and 1. So that means this is very easy to factor. So we're going to say it is x, and then those two numbers goes here. So it's a 2 and 1. You can see this simply gives you the factoring. And after that, we know what to do. What we're going to do, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So after that, what we're going to do, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So we're going to say x plus 2 equals 0, or x plus 1 equal to 0. This is very easy to solve. You're going to add -2 to both sides. So x equal -2, or x equal -1. So this give the solution. So let's look at another one. So how about so the next example, solve x squared minus 3x plus 2. So if you have something like that, same idea, you look at the constant term C, you're going to find two numbers, factors of 2, so that the when you multiply you get 2, when you add them you get -3. So you can see that those two numbers are -2 and -1. So once you get those two numbers, we did as before, we have x and x. So those two numbers goes here. So that means this is -3 and this is -1. So and after that we do as we did before. So we're going to set each of them equal to 0. You can say O x minus 1 equal to 0. So we have x equal 2 or x equal 1. So you can see that these are very easy to solve. Very easy to solve. So let's look at a slightly different problem now. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at this problem. So how about this one? Let's say we have 2x squared minus 3 equal x. But when you look at this problem, and you can see that it is not in the standard form. So what we're going to do, we're going to write them in standard form, bringing x to the other side. How to do that? You're going to subtract x from both sides. So once you subtract x from both sides, you can rewrite this equation as 2x squared minus x minus 3 equals 0. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to use the factoring of AC product method. So if you look at the factoring of AC, actually in this case you can use the other method as well, because this 3 doesn't have many factors, so we can go with the easy method, just the factoring of C. So we have -3. So what we want to do, so this is a negative problem. That means we need to find two numbers. When you multiply you get -3, and then the larger term has a negative sign. So what are the factors we have? So the factors are -3 and 1, because the larger one has to have the negative sign, and there are no other factoring. So that means that's the only one we need to consider in this case. So that means we can simply write the factoring here. So we have 2x x then equal to 0. So what we're going to do, we're going to put those two numbers so that it gets the middle term. So what's the middle term? How you get the middle term? You have to get negative x to get the negative x. So what we need to do is, so you can put the -3 here and the +1 there, and then you can see that when you multiply, you get the negative x term here. So that means that's the correct factoring. And you can see that if you switch the two, it's not going to work. So since we have the factoring, now we know what to do. We're going to set each factor equal to 0. So we have 2x minus 3 equal to 0, or x plus 1 equal to 0. And then you to solve this one, what we can do, we can add 3 to both sides. So we have 2x equal 3, and then you divide by 2, so x equal 3 halves. And then here you can add negative 1 to both sides, so x equal negative 1. So that means solution is x equal negative 1 comma 3 halves. So those are the two solutions that we get. And it's always a good idea to check whether that's the right one, just plugging in the original problem. Good. So let's do more problems. How about this one? So let's do a problem like this. So the next one, let's say you have 6x squared minus 13x plus 6 equals 0. So we can use the AC product method. So you're going to multiply A and C. So when you multiply A and C, you're going to get 36. So we have A and C. So you're going to get 36. So what we're trying to do, we try to find two numbers. So this is a what kind of problem is this? This is a negative positive problem. So negative positive means the two numbers should have the same sign. So you're going to find two numbers. When you multiply, you get 36. When you add them, you get negative 13. You can easily see that those two numbers are negative 9 and negative 4. So we find the two numbers. So now what we can do, after we find the two numbers, now we can write the factoring. So, and you can see that this is negative 9 and negative 6, negative 4. So that means, so can there be a factoring like this? Can there be a factoring like 6x, 6x and x? Can there be a factoring like that? So you can see that 6 doesn't divide those two numbers. That means there cannot be a factoring like this. So we don't want to worry about this factoring. So that means the only possible factoring would be factors of 6x squared. So that means we only need to think of 3x and 2x only. So you can see that for this kind of situation, this method is much faster. Now you can find the other numbers very easily. So we already have 3x here. So one factor is negative 9. So that means we're going to divide negative 9 by 3. So that means this has to be negative 3. And then we have negative 4. We have 2. So this has to be negative 2. So those are the two factoring we get. So what we need to do, so we're going to set this equal to 0. So you can see that if you try to use just the factors of 6 only, so this can be very complicated because there are a lot of terms to consider. But if you're using this method, you don't want to consider much. After you get the two factoring, you just divide by the coefficient to get the factor. So again, so what we did, so how we get this one? So to get this one, what we did, we divide negative 9 by 3. So negative 9 is the number here. And do the same thing with the other one. We divide negative 4 by 2 to get the other one. So very easy. Now what we do, as before, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So we're going to say 3x minus 2 equal to 0, or 2x minus 3 equal to 0. And here this is easy. You're going to bring 2 to the other side. So it's become positive 2 divided by 3. So x equal 2/3 here. Or what happened here? So you're going to bring 3 to the other side. Divided by 2 is 3 halves. So those are the two numbers. And you can easily see that the solution, these are the solutions. Good. So how about we change, we consider this one. So let's look at another problem. So let's say we have 6x squared 35x minus 6 equals 0. So we're going to factor this one. So it looks like a little complicated, but not that difficult. So what we can do first, so we're going to go with the AC product method. So we have A and C, and so what type of problem is this? This is a plus minus problem. We have a plus and a minus. So what is a plus minus problem means? You're going to get two numbers with opposite sign. When you add them, you get the middle term. So what is the product we want to consider here? The product we want to consider here is 6 times negative 6. Those are two numbers that we have. That means negative 36. So we are going to find two numbers. When you multiply, you get negative 36. When you add them, you get 35. So that means those two numbers has to be, one has to be 36. The other one has to be minus 1. So those two are the two numbers that we are looking for, because when you multiply the two numbers you get 36, when you add the two numbers you get 35. Now you can see that because of the negative 1, you can see that only possible factoring would be 6x and 1x, because of that negative 1 equal to 0. So very easy. Now what we can do, to get the factor, you can see that this is 6. That means you divide 36 by 6. So that means this has to be plus 6. So how to get this number? To get this number, what we do, we can divide 36 by 6. And do the same thing. You divide negative 1 by 1. So that means the other number has to be negative 1. So those two are the factoring for this one. You can see this method is very quick. Especially like when you factor like terms like that. So now we know what to do. We're going to set each of them equal to 0. So we have 6x minus 1 equal to 0, or x plus 6 equal to 0. Very easy. We can divide. We can bring 1 to the other side. Divide by 6. So you're going to get x equal 1/6, or we're going to bring 6 to the other side. That means negative 6. So that means those two are the solutions. Good. So let's try to solve a different type of problem now. So we have, so how about this one? So we can look at a problem like this. So the next one, we can do this. So x squared plus 9 equals 6x. And when you look at the problem, you can see that this is also not in the standard form. So we're going to bring everything to one side. So we can write this one as x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. The same thing, this is a minus plus problem. That means we're going to find product factors of 9 so that you get the middle term. When you add, so you can see that they have the same sign because it's a plus sign. This plus sign means they have the same sign. Though sign has to be negative. That means your factors are simply negative 3 and negative 3. And you can see that when you add the two, you get negative 6. So everything works perfect. So that means your factoring has to be x minus 3 and x minus 3 equals 0. So in other words, sometimes we write this one as x minus 3 squared equal to 0 also. Because sometimes useful, this is what we call a 0 with multiplicity 2. So this is a multiplicity 2. Multiplicity 2. That's the 2. Multiplicity, because it's repeat, the 0 repeats 2 times. Okay, now what we can do, we're going to set one of them equal to 0. So one of the factors equal to 0. So this says that x is simply equal to 3. So we can say that the solutions are, so x equal 3 with multiplicity 2. Also sometimes we write sometimes we write this one as x equal 3 comma 3 to mean that 3 repeats, and sometimes it is useful in certain problems. For example, in differential equations it would be a good idea to write it like that, because we know that the solutions changes depending on what type of problem roots we get. So if there's a repeated root, it's a different solution. Okay, and then we also notice something here. So you can see that so there's a relation between this 9 there's a relation between this 9 and -6. So you can see that 9 is simply equals to -6 half squared. So 9 is simply equal to -6 half squared. So if that is the case, then we have this formula. So let's write that. We have, when we have x squared plus bx plus when you have b over 2 squared, so you can simply write this one as x plus b over 2 squared. So this is like a special formula, or what we normally call the completing square method. So if you remember this formula, then you can do this problem much quicker, because you notice that in this problem what we have is x squared minus 6x plus 9, because, and then you can see that this is x squared minus 6x plus -6 over 2 squared. So once you notice that, then your solution is simply going to be x, which is the half of the middle term, so that means it is 3 squared. So you can write it like that. It's always half of the middle term, so you get so this is simply -6 divided by 2, half of the middle term. So then you can write it like that. So that's the benefit of this method. So let's do one more. So we can do this one. So next example is 16 x squared plus 1 equal 8x. So the same thing, we can write them in the standard form first. So you can write this one as 16x squared minus 8x plus 1 equals 0. And how to do this problem? So this is 1. So it would be, so I'm going to use the factoring of C only method. So we have 1. So, and then you can see that this is a minus plus problem. Plus problem means both terms have the same sign, so the only possibility can be -1, -1. That's the only factoring. So that means this simply says that because you have to get a 16 here, so that means it has to be 4x minus 1, 4x minus 1 equals 0. And then if you set one of them equal to 0, you can see that you're going to get x equal 1/4 with multiplicity 2. With multiplicity 2. Good. And then what we can do is we can also solve some problems that are like slightly different. So for example, let's look at this one. So how about this problem? So you can see 1 over 6 x squared minus x over 3 equal 1/2. So if you get a problem like that, I mean, you can work with fractions, there's nothing wrong with that. But what we can do, we can make this little easier by multiplying by the LCD, so least common denominator. So what's the LCD for this one? So you can see the numbers are 6, 3 and 2. So you can see that the LCD, least common denominator, is simply equals to 6 because everything is factors of 6. So what we can do, we're going to multiply by the LCD of each term. So let's multiply each term by 6. So it is 6 times 1 over 6 x squared minus 6 times x over 3 equals 6 times 1/2. So you multiply by 6 each term. So so there are some simplification going on here, and you can see this get cancelled and this cancels, and so you get 2, this cancel and you get 3. So that and then we get the equation, you get x squared here, and then you're going to get negative 2x, and then we get 3. Now what we're going to do, we're going to bring everything to one side. So if you bring everything to one side, this is x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Now we can easily factor this. We can look at the factors of negative 3. So this is a negative problem. That means you're going to get two numbers with opposite sign. Once you add it, you get negative 2. So what are the two numbers? The two numbers are, you can see, it is negative 3 and 1, because the larger one has to carry the sign of the middle one. So you can see those two are the numbers. So that means your factoring is simply going to be x minus 3 x plus 1 equals 0. Now as before, we're going to set them equal to 0. So you're going to get the solution. So we have x minus 3 equal to 0 or x plus 1 equal to 0. So you're going to get x equal 3 or x equal negative 1. So that's the solution of this problem. And so let's do also like a problem like this. So what if you have a problem like this: 3x squared minus 4 equals 0. You can see that this is a special case where b equals 0. So that's what happened. So b equals 0, so that means you don't see that term anymore. So this is like easy. So what you can do, you're going to move that 4 to the other side. So you can rewrite this one as 3x squared equals 4, and then divided by 3. So you can write this one as 4 over 3, and then take the square root. Once you take the square root, you're going to get x equal plus or minus square root of 4 over 3. And if you can simplify, so you can see that this is 2 over square root 3. You can leave it like that, or you can rationalize the denominator. And if you want to rationalize the denominator, you can multiply the top and bottom by square root 3. So square root 3, square root 3. So that means your final answer is going to be, you can write as plus or minus 2 square root 3 over 3. So that's the final answer. So how about this one then? So we have 3x squared plus 4 equals 0. So this is very similar. So you're going to have 3x squared. You're going to bring the 4 to the other side. But now the problem is when you try to take the square root, you get complex numbers. So and then we have x squared, which is equal to negative 4 over 3. And then once you take the square root, you get x equal very similar, but you need to write this one as So what we normally do is we can write this one as first 4/3 I squared, where I squared equal -1. That's a complex unit. Now we take the square root. So after that, you can see once you take the square root, it's very similar to the previous problem. So you're going to get 2 square root 3 over 3i. So that's the solution you get for this one. Good. And then what we can do is we can talk, because these are all like simple factoring problems. So next what we can do is we can talk about the quadratic formula. So if we do the quadratic formula, so that's the last problem of this type. Let's do this one. So it's the last problem of this type. So you can say, how about this one? Solve a 24x squared plus 7x minus 6. So you can see a lot of factors here. So what we're trying to do, as before, we need to find the factors of these 24 and -6 product. So we can see it, 24 is 8 times 3, and -6, I mean, you can write in several different ways. So what are the possible factoring of these? So you can see, so we can have 2 times 3 as one way to write it, and then what we need to do is we need to find two numbers. Once you multiply, you get the product. Once you add, you get 7. So what are the two numbers that you get? So how about you multiply these two, you get 16. You multiply those two, you get 9. So what I'm going to do, you put a negative sign for that. So what we can do, when you multiply, you get 9, but you can make it -9. So that means I'm going to pick the two numbers as 16 and -9. So and then let's think of possible factoring of these numbers, and you can see the 24 has like a lot of different type of factoring. So you can see, for example, 24 times 1, and clearly because this is none of them divide 24, does not divide any of them, so that means this is not the possibility. And then we have 8 times 3, and you can see that those two numbers actually divide that, so that may be a possibility. And then also some other choices. What are the other choices that we have? We have 12 times 2, that doesn't work because 12 does not divide any of them. And then the other one is 6 times 4, and you can see that this that also doesn't work because those two numbers does not divide any of them. So that means the only possibility that we have is 8 and 3. So that suggests that it has to be 8x and 3x equals 0. And to get the number, what we do, we have 8, so we can divide by 16. That means this has to be plus 2. And then we have 3, that means this has to be -3. So you get the factoring of that like that. And after that, we know what to do. We're going to set them equal to 0. So we have 8x minus 3 equal to 0, or 3x plus 2 equal to 0. And to solve this one, we're going to move 3 to the other side and divide by 8. So that means x equal 3 over 8, or x equal -2 over 3. So that means the solutions are the solutions are x equal 308 or negative 2/3. So this is how we use the basic factoring to solve a quadratic equation. So now let's talk about how to use the quadratic formula. So what's the quadratic formula? So that's the second method. So use the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula. So let's recall the formula. So when you have a problem like that, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a not equal to 0, we can write the solution as x equal negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac square root over 2a. So that is the quadratic formula. So what you gonna do is we just gonna plug in for a, b, c and d. So let's start with a simple problem. So this is the, let's look at this one. So we have, let's say, x squared minus 5x plus 5 equals 0. So see whether you can just use the factoring for this one. So can you find, so you can see so what we need here. So this is a minus plus problem. That means we need to find factors of 5 so that and then both the same sign. So that means there are only factoring that we have is negative 5, negative 1. Those are the only factoring that we have. If we need because we are looking for integer solutions, integer factoring. So that means in this case these are the only ones that we have, but you can see that none of them gonna produce the middle term. So that means the basic factoring method does not work here. So this is a question whether we can. So we cannot do it. So we're gonna go to the quadratic formula, and you can see that here a is equals to 1, b is equals to negative 5, c is equals to 5. So we're going to plug in here. So x equal negative b, that means 5, plus or minus b squared, so that means negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a equal to 1, c equal to 5, square root over 2a, which is 2 times 1. So let's simplify. You have 5 plus or minus negative 5 squared means 25. When you multiply 4 and 5, you get 20 square root over 2. And then how to simplify this one? So it's 25, 20, that means 5. So you get 5 plus or minus square root 5 over 2. So you can write it like this, or you can even split it, write it like that. 5 half plus or minus square root 5 over 2. So you can write it like that. So this is how we use the quadratic formula to solve this equation. You can see that you cannot get this one you just using the factoring method. But what you can do is you can use the complete factoring method. So you can the completing square method. You can use the completing square to get the same solution, but you can just get there is using the quadratic formula. Good. So let's do a few more. So the next one, we have, let's say, 3x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. And in this problem you can see that a is equal to 3, b is equal to negative 5, c is equals to 1. So let's plug in. So x equal negative b that means negative 5, negative 5 plus or minus, as before, negative 5 squared, that means 25 minus 4 times AC, that means 3 and 1 square root divided by 2 times A, 2 times 3. So if you simplify, you get 5 plus or minus 25 minus 12 means 13. So you get 13 square root over 6. Again, you can split it. You can write this one as 5 half plus or minus square root 13 over 6. So what you can do is you can leave it like that, or you can use a calculator and write the answer up to 2 decimal places. We normally write up to 2 decimal places. So if you use a calculator, you're going to get 0.83 plus or minus 0.60 I. So that's the solution, either as the exact value or using a calculator as the decimal. So use a calculator. Use a calculator. Good. So let's do another one. So the next one is, let's look at this problem. So let's say we have x squared minus 3x plus 3 equals 0. Again, so we're going to plug in. So x equal negative b, that means 3 plus or minus b squared, that means 9 minus 4 AC, that means a equal 1, so we can ignore that, so you get that, over 2a, that means 2. You can get 3 plus or minus, you get negative 3 square root over 2. But when you want to find negative 3 square root, we can use the complex numbers for that. So as before, we can write this one as 3 plus or minus 3i squared, because I squared is negative 1. Now take the square root. Once you take the square root, you're going to get 3 plus or minus square root 3i over 2. You can leave it like that, or you can split them like this. Square root 3 over 2i. So that is the solution for that problem. Also, you can notice that sometimes, they simplifies very well. For example, in this one, so you can see this simplifies. So x squared minus 4x plus 5 equals 0. So again, in this problem, you can see a equals 1, b equals minus 4, and c equals 5. So let's plug into the equation. So it is x equal negative b, that means 4, plus or minus b squared, that means 16, minus 4ac, so it is 4 times 5 square root over 2a, that means 2. And then you can see it is 4 plus or minus, you get 16 minus 20, so you get negative 4 square root. Using the same trick before, we can see that this is 4 plus or minus 2i over 2, and you can see that this simplifies very well. If you divide by 2, so you can cancel, and you can divide this one by 2, so you end up getting 2 plus or minus I. So sometimes this simplifies very well. So So as the last problem of this type, let's look at this problem. What if you try to solve the first problem that we discussed? Because you know that we can easily find the factors of this one. So we already know what are the factors. So the factors are x plus 2 and x plus 1. So what if someone try to use the quadratic formula for this one? So let's try to use the quadratic formula for this problem and see what's going to happen. So let's say x equal -3, that's the b, plus or minus b squared, that means 9, minus 4ac, so it's 4ac square root over 2. So let's see how it simplifies. So it's -3 plus or minus, this is 8 minus 8, so that means 1 square root. 1 square root means 1. So what we want to do, we want to consider the two cases separately. So x equal, if you consider the plus sign, you get -3 plus 1 over 2, which is you're going to get -3 plus 1 means -2 divided by 2, so it's -1. Or x equal, let's use a minus sign. So if you use a minus sign, -3 minus 1 over 2, so in this case you get -4, so you get -2. And you can see that this is exactly the same solutions that you get from these two as well, because this is going to give you x equal -2 and that one going to give you x equal -1. So those two are the two solutions, and that's exactly, so that means even if you try to use the quadratic formula by mistake, you still get the same solution. So there are a certain type of problems that can be converted to quadratic equations. So let's talk about that. So this is similar to quadratic equation. So as the first example of this type, let's look at this one. Let's say solve x minus 1 minus 2 over x equals 0. X minus 1 minus 2 over x equals 0. So once you look at this problem, you might see that this doesn't look like quadratic, but you can convert. So what we're going to do, we're going to multiply by x. So multiply by x. Once you multiply by x, what's going to happen? You can see you're going to get x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. Once you multiply by x, you get this equation. You multiply each and every term by x. You get x squared minus x minus 2. Now you can see this is quadratic. So you can simply factor this. So we did problems like that. So the factor is going to be x and x equals 0, and you can see the two factors are, one is -2, large one carry the sign, and then +1. So those two are the factors. And then what we do, we're gonna again set everyone equal to 0, each factor equal to 0. So you're gonna get x equal 2 or x equal -1. So you can solve a problem like that. So but we have to multiply by x first. So let's do another one. How about this one? X squared minus 7 plus 12 over x squared equals 0. This is also very similar. In this problem, you're going to multiply by x squared. So multiply by x squared, multiplying by x squared, you're going to get x to the 4th minus 7x squared plus 12 equals 0. Actually, you can see that this is a quadratic equation. This is quadratic in x squared. So what we normally do is we're going to make a substitution. So we're going to say let u equal x squared. If you do that, then you can see that x squared, u squared equal x to the squared, that means x to the 4th power. So that means you can rewrite the equation in u now. So you can say this is u squared minus 7u plus 12 equals 0. So that's what you get. Now what we're gonna factor this. So what are the factors? 4 and 3. So u minus 4 and u minus 3 equals 0. Now what we can do, you're gonna set, so this says that u equal 3 comma 4. Now what we can do, we're gonna set each of them equal to that, x squared equal to one of them. So you're gonna say, if you go with the first one, then you can say x squared equal 3. This give you that x equal plus or minus square root 3, and then you set the other one, x squared equal to 4, that's the other value. So this says that x equal plus or minus 2. So that means the solution, so solutions are x equal plus or minus square root 3 comma plus or minus 2. So those are all the solutions of this one. So what we did was we first multiply by x squared and then use a substitution, u equal x squared, and then you get a simple quadratic equation in u, and then you solve for u, and then you set them equal to x again and solve for that. So let's do one more like that. So the next example, x3 plus x minus 12 over x. This is also very similar. So it looks like cubic here, but there's one no x there. So multiplying by x. So if you do that, then you're gonna get x to the 4th power and then plus x squared minus 12 equals 0. And as before, we can write this one as x squared plus x squared minus 12. So if you treat x squared like u, so this is easy to factor, then you can see the two factors are this is negative 12, so you're gonna get positive 4 and negative 3. So you're gonna get positive 4 and negative 3. So you can also use substitution as before, or just do it like that. Now set each one equal to 0, so you're gonna get x squared plus 4 equal to 0, or x squared minus 3 equals 0, and then as before we're gonna go one by one. So we're gonna get x squared plus 4 equals 0, so that means x squared equal negative 4. So x equal you can see plus or minus 2i, and then we're going to get the other one. So we have x squared minus 3 equal to 0. So that means x squared equal 3. So x is plus or minus square root 3. So the solutions are x equal, let's write the real first, and comma plus or minus 2i. Okay, those are all the solutions of this one. So let's do a different type of problem now. So the next one is this one. So example, how about this? So again, solve 4 over 2x minus 3 square root plus 2x minus 3 square root equal 5, like this. So you can clearly see we can use the same thing as we did before. So we're going to say let u equal 2x minus 3 square root. We can take the whole term. So if you take that as the whole term, then you can rewrite the equation as 4 over u plus u equal 5. And as we did before, you're going to multiply by u. So then you're going to get 4 plus u squared equal 5u. If you bring all the terms to one side, you can rewrite this one as u squared minus 5u plus 4 equals 0. Very easy to find factors. It is negative 4 and negative 1. So u minus 4, u minus 1 equals 0. So this says that u equal 1 and 4. So as before, we're going to set each one equals to the term. So we're going to say 2x minus 3 square root equals 1. That's the first one. So you're going to square. So you're going to get 2x minus 3 equal 1. And this says that, so you're going to bring 3 to the other side. So you're going to 4 divided by 2. So x equal 2. We still don't know whether that's a solution. Now what we can do, we can substitute that solution to check whether that's the case. So when you apply x equal 2, and you can see that it works. So we check x equal 2 in the original equation. So it works. And then go with the other one. So we have 2x minus 3 square root equals the other number, which is 4, and do the same thing. You're going to square. Once you square, you're going to get 2x minus 3 equals 16. So this says that 3 goes to the other side by 19. So x equal 19 divided by 2. And we can check. And we can see that it works. So that means the solutions are both x equal 2 and 19 divided by 2. So those are the two solutions. And let's do another one of the similar type. So we can try this problem. So let's do next one like this. So let's say solve 6x plus 3x minus 2 square root equals 7. So this is a little bit complicated. So we have 3x minus 2 and we don't see anything. So the best thing would be to convert this into the quadratic equation. We try to create 3x minus 2. So that means we have 6x there. So what we're going to do, we're going to subtract negative 4. So we can start with 6x plus 3x minus 2, because we try to create a multiple of the term inside. So we're going to subtract -4. If you subtract -4, you can rewrite this one as 6x -4 plus 3x minus 2 square root equal 7 minus 4, which is equal to 3. So then you can write this equation as 2 times 3x minus 2 plus 3x minus 2 square root minus 3 equals 0. Now, as before, we're going to say let u equal 3x minus 2 square root. Once you do that, then you can see u squared is simply 3x minus 2. So you can rewrite the equation like this. So 2 u squared plus u minus 3 equals 0. But we know how to factor this equation. We already this one. So it's 2u and the u equals 0. So you think of factors of 3 and -3 so that it can work, and you can see that the +3 and the -1 works. So that means you're going to set each and everyone equal to 0 separately. So then you get u equal, so you're going to get -3/2 or 1. Now what we can do, we're going to set each and everyone equal to the term separately. So let's do that. So I'm going to solve that part here. So if you go with the easy one, so it is 3x minus 2 square root equals to 1. You square both sides. Then you get 3x minus 2 equal 1. So this says that x equal 1. Now we're going to check. You can check always in the original equation. If you plug in that in the original equation, and you're going to see that it works. So you're going to check in the original equation. So how to check? You're going to substitute. Once you substitute x equal 1, you're going to see that 6 plus 1, which is equal to 7. So that works. So let's do the other one. So the other one is 3x minus 2 square root equals to -3/2. And then you can see that when you write square root, so this is a positive number. So that means this is not possible. So not possible because this is the positive one. So not possible. So this is not possible. So that means so you don't get a solution. So that means the only solution is the only solution x equal 1. So the only solution you get is x equal 1 because this is a square root term, that's a positive term, but it cannot be equal to a negative term. So that means it's not going to work. Good. Now, how about this one? This is also very similar. So let's say this one. So these are like different things that you can do with the quadratic equation. Over x minus 1 square root plus 2 times x minus 1 over x plus 2 equal 3. So look a little scary, but still we can do the same way. So we're gonna say let u equal this term. So I'm gonna say x plus 2 over x minus 1 square root. I'm gonna write the whole term. So then you can see that x minus 1 over x plus 2. Square root is simply 1 over u. So that means your equation simply becomes u plus 2 over u equal 3. Now you know how to do this. So you're going to square by u, multiply by u. So then you can rewrite this one as u squared minus 3u plus 2 equals 0. There are factors, u minus 2 and u plus 1. So the solutions are negative 1 and 2. And then this is square root 1, so that means this is not possible, so we don't use that. Oh no, actually there was a mistake, so this should be so you get negative 2, negative 1. So then you're going to get that u equal 1 or 2. So what we can do, we're going to set them separately. So let's start with the first one, x plus 2 over x minus 1 equal 1. This says that if you cross multiply x plus 2 equal x minus 1, and this leads to 2 equal negative 1, this is not possible. So that means u equal 1 is not a solution. So let's take over the other one. So let's do the other one. So x plus 2 over x minus 1. Actually, I forgot the square root sign. Square root, we said this is equal to 2. So that means when you square, you get x plus 2 over x minus 1 equal 4. Cross multiply, once you cross multiply, you get x plus 2 equal 4 times x minus 1. And we can simplify this one easily because this is 4x minus 4. So that means this says that 3x equals 6, so x equal 2. And what we can do, we can check, and you can see it work. When you plug x equal 2, it work. So that means the solution is x equal to only. Good. Let's do one last problem. So how about this one? So this is the last problem. So solve x plus 1 over x squared minus x minus 1 over x minus 6 equals 0. Next example. So say solve. Let's say x to the 4th power minus x to the cube minus 4x squared minus x plus 1 equals 0. So this is like a special problem, and you can see a few things. The coefficient of this equals that, coefficient of this equals that. So that means it's symmetric. So symmetric. So it's a symmetric equation. So what we normally do is we divide by this term. We divide by x squared. So let's do that. So once you divide by x squared, you end up getting x squared minus x minus 4 minus 1 over x plus 1 over x squared. So this is what you get. Now what we can do, we're going to collect terms. So what we're going to do, we're going to move the terms around so that you can write this as a special form. So let's move this x squared and 1 over x squared term together, and also I'm going to leave the and then also you have negative x and negative 1 over x, and I'm going to have negative 4 over there. So what you're trying to do, you can see that if you pull the negative sign of these two terms, then it is x plus 1 over x. So that means we're going to see whether you can write the first term also as a power of x plus 1 over x. Actually, we can see that that's the case, because if we have a 2 there, we can do that. So what we can do, we can add a 2 and subtract 2. So we can rewrite this one as x squared plus 2 plus 1 over x squared, and then that's the first one, and then I'll pull the negative sign out, so it's x plus 1 over x. So you add a 2, you subtract 2, so you get negative 6. Now you can see the first term is simply x plus 1 over x whole thing squared minus x plus 1 over x minus 6. Now what we can do, we can let u equal x plus 1 over x. Once you do that, your equation simply becomes u squared minus u minus 6 equals 0. There are nice factors, u minus 3 and u plus 2 equals 0. So this can give you u equal negative 2 and 3. So as before, we're going to set each of them equal to x plus 1 over x and solve. So let's do that part now. So we have, so let's set that equal to 0. So the first one is x plus 1 over x, which is equal to negative 2. So then again, as before, we can multiply by x, so we can rewrite this one as x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 0. After you move the terms around, this is simply x minus 1, x minus 1. So this says that x equal 1, and we can check that in the original equation, and you can see that if you plug in x equal 1 in the original equation, it's not going to work. So you can see that if you plug in x equal 1, no, it's not going to work. So so check, but it's failed. So that means x equal 1 is not a solution. So not a solution. And then do the other one. So we have x plus 1 over x equal the other number. The other number is 3. So then as before, x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. And then what we're going to do is difficult to factor because there are 1, so one has only factors, so in two factors you get the sum negative 3, it's not going to work, so we can use the quadratic formula. So x equal negative b, so it's 3 plus or minus b squared, that means 9, 4ac means 4 square root over 2. So if you simplify, you get 3 plus or minus square root 5 over 2, and you can see that once you check, it works. It's a bit difficult to check, but it's gonna work. So that means the solution is x equal 3 plus or minus square root 5 over 2. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to give you a problem for you to try to see whether you learn the material. So this is for you to try. So let's say solve. So I'm going to give this as an exercise. Solve. Let's say x squared minus 1 over x squared minus 2 times x squared minus 1 over x squared minus 8 equals 0. So the hint is there are 8 solutions. There are 8. Okay, so try to find all 8 solutions. So this is the end of how to solve the quadratic equation.